Remakers Mark, episode 61, The Cell. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Remakers Mark. Here we are in the 61st episode, where we are discussing the slightly disturbing but also entertaining film, The Cell. With me, as always, are my friends Andy Wicks. Andy, how are you doing tonight, and what is your ideal dream environment?
I am doing very well, thank you for asking. And I don't know if it's an ideal dream environment because practically it really makes no sense at all, but I've always been fond of daydreaming when I'm flying in a plane and you get above the layer of clouds and it's a beautiful blue sky with the sun shining and the clouds have this nice kind of pink and yellow and orange hue to them. And that just seems like a natural environment to just kind of drift off into a dream. So that's what I'm going to say.
Nice. I think I misunderstood the assignment because mine is so different from that. But that's okay. I'm here for it. I love it.
You're assuming that I understood the assignment, so that's on you.
We'll see. If we've got 4 more people to figure out who was right on, stay tuned. Jeremy Nilsson, how are you tonight, and what is your ideal dream environment?
I am doing wonderful, and I will have to say it's sort of a magical foresty sort of vibe, kind of like Rivendell, maybe. Where it's a forest, but it's also like an ethereal forest.
Like Thomas Kincaid's forest?
Yeah, well, kind of. And also I can fly.
Well,
naturally. Of course. I like that. I like that a lot. I would dream there. Lee Hallucinogenic Dreamscape, how are you tonight, and what is your ideal dream environment?
I'm well, and I tend to not have dreams that are very normal. So any dream that just seems like a normal, normal everyday life is more ideal. I don't know why, but the very surreal ones are not my favorite.
You find more comfort in the ordinary versus the extraordinary,
out
of fear of the extraordinary getting too weird, kind of?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. It's interesting. I like that.
Do you guys ever have dreams where you, in the dream, realize that you're dreaming?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really weird.
That's usually when I wake up, though.
Yeah, it's super bizarre.
I've had ones where for example, I usually sleep about 7 to 7.5 hours, but like if I go to bed at a time on a weekend, usually where I have the opportunity to sleep more than that, I'll kind of drift in between awake and asleep, and I don't really know where I'm at, but it feels like I'm that way for like an hour, and I'm sure it's like 7 minutes or something, but it just feels like it goes forever like that. Mark Joesting, what is your ideal dream environment? Also, hey, what's up? How are you?
Hey, how's it going?
Oh, good, thank you.
I'm well, thanks. And for my ideal dream environment, I'd have to say my bed. If I could be in my bed, dreaming about being in my bed, well, that would just be that would be lovely.
Just beds all the way down.
That's having your cake and eating it too.
I dig it. That is not a incorrect answer. I feel like that is a great way to go. I thought about that. My name is Kyle Delahunt. I will be your host again this wonderful, wonderful evening. And my ideal dream environment. So here's what it would look like. And again, this is why I think I misunderstood the assignment. I would be driving a golf cart around the golf course that I worked at when I worked at the golf course at Grandview Lodge when I was like in college. And the front of it would be like a big screen TV that I could watch whatever movies on. And then I would also be recording a podcast, like talking about the movie that I was watching, that I could just pause to golf long enough to just like, jump off the cart, golf, hit really good shots mostly, and then just jump back in and continue driving around in a golf cart while watching movies and talking about movies on podcasts. So, yeah.
That's a big golf cart.
It is.
I think you understood it perfectly.
I'm assuming that you can see, like the golf cart drives itself, right?
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. It's self-driving golf cart. Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Yeah. Although I would flip it to manual mode from time to time and just kind of peek my head out like a dog, like out the window kind of. Because half the joy of being in a golf cart is driving a golf cart. So, yeah, I would still want to live that dream for sure.
Live that golf cart life.
That's right. Seriously. I'm so looking forward to being an old person so that I can like maybe have a golf cart of my own because, man, That would make me so happy.
There are at least 2 households in my neighborhood who own golf carts and drive them around the neighborhood in the summer.
Nice. You should steal them. Just cause.
You're assuming that I haven't already.
So when I was working at the golf course, so I worked at this tiny golf course at a resort that had many bigger golf courses. So it was pretty.
It's called miniature golf, Kyle.
Miniature golf, sorry, small golf. No, it was a smaller golf course. It was not miniature golf. It was regular golf, but it was like more of the family golf course. And every year, they got at the resort that I worked, there were tons of different corporate clients that would come up, and then like they would have a big kind of company tournament or scramble or whatever. And every year, some company that was like automotive-y or something like that would come, and they would play the first hole, and then at the second hole, they would basically turn the governors on the golf carts off, because the golf carts are only supposed to go so fast, and they would just crank it all the way up or down. I can't remember which. So when we'd get the golf carts in, I'd just about like drive it through the fence because they were so fast trying to back it into its place. But then I would always fix them, but I would always set one aside, like way in the back corner, that I would use for the golf cart for like driving beverages around, because I mean, my God, you have to do that. It was so much fun. So I held on to that thing as long as I could without endangering people.
So you were like
that
one
was
Dinosaur Jr. music video.
Yes, that's exactly right. Yeah.
Feel the pain.
Oh God, it was fun. So dangerous.
I can't get past picturing Kyle working as a golf cart attendant at a miniature golf course and driving around in like a little Krusty the Clown's sized golf cart car.
Are you making fun of my automobile?
It is the largest one I could afford. Wow. Nice. Deteriorated rapidly, and I love it. All right. Before we dig into the movie, Lee, this movie was your pick. So therefore, do you have a recommendation for us?
I do. I have been watching a lot of documentaries lately, and I may have mentioned this to you guys in a previous call, but on HBO Max, I found a documentary called McMillions. And I don't know if anyone's seen that, but I think it's a 6-part documentary series about the scandal that happened at McDonald's back in the 90s with the Monopoly game pieces.
I remember hearing about that.
Yeah. And it's covers the entire scandal from the time that the FBI got involved, and then all the way through to, people getting prosecuted for it. And it really starts out kind of comical and really funny. Like the FBI agent who was involved, he's kind of a character. And it's very lighthearted in the beginning, but then it eventually like gets kind of dark. And there's talk of like, mob involvement and this sort of thing. But it's a really interesting documentary series about about true crime, essentially. So I recommend it. It's called McMillions, and I think it's still on HBO Max.
Nice. I have heard of it, and I think I have it added to my HBO list, but I haven't watched it yet, so I'll have to bump it up. I heard good things when it was first out from a bunch of my coworkers, so you're amongst good company there.
Yeah.
Nice. All right, let's continue on by talking about The Cell. As usual, we're going to talk about our summary of the movie and our history with it. Andy, this is your area of expertise, besides death. I like this one better. Why don't you take it away?
There's a lot of death in this movie, too.
Yeah, that's fair.
The Venn diagram is more or less one circle.
It is.
The Cell is a 2000 film, as in a film from the year 2000, from director Tarsem Singh in his debut for a feature film, no less, and stars Jennifer Lopez, Vince Vaughn, Vincent D'Onofrio, and some other folks. Lopez plays Catherine Deane, a psychologist of sorts, who uses some unexplained technology a la Inception to enter the minds of comatose patients and help them, I guess. Vince Vaughn plays cynical FBI agent Peter Novak, a guy who doesn't believe that evil people can be redeemed. Vincent D'Onofrio plays evil person Carl Stargher, a serial killer with a dormant virus that sends him into a catatonic state just after his latest kidnapping. Vaughn and Lopez team up to try to enter D'Onofrio's mind and find his latest victim before she ends up dead. Hilarity ensues. Lee, as Kyle said earlier, this was your pick, so tell us about your history with it.
Well, I did go see this in the theater in 2000, and I think what kind of caught my eye was some of the previews, and just it looked very interesting visually. So that's kind of what attracted me to it. I wasn't really that big into Jennifer Lopez, so I was like, well, I'll go see it anyway. But I ended up being surprised by her performance, and I thought she was really good in it. Ever since then, I've kind of gone back to it on occasion, just because I really like the detective side of it and like the questions that are raised in the movie, and that it's kind of like a Silence of the Lambs meets The Matrix kind of crossover movie. That's what it feels like to me anyway.
All right. Kyle, I believe you also have a little history here.
Yeah. So this was back in my my bigger film nerdery days. Didn't have a podcast then, thank God. That would have been awful and intolerable. But I was a much bigger, like, reading movie rumor sites kind of guy, you know, like Ain't It Cool News was one of my daily views. And I don't even know if Ain't It Cool News is around anymore. That I'm guessing it is, but boy, that takes me back. Anyways, on Ain't It Cool, this I think got kind of lambasted. So I came into it sort of holier than thou and was far too judgmental against it when I saw it. Like, I was impressed by a lot of the visuals, but overall I just thought it was lacking in a lot of different ways. And I actually liked it a lot more this time. I feel like I just have a much more balanced look at things and can see things differently. I didn't have as critical an eye at this point, which is fine. I'm okay with that.
You've just stopped caring.
It's true. I've got old guy apathy, and boy howdy, is it treating me well. What can I say? So yeah, that's my experience. Saw it, I'm pretty sure in 2000 in the theater, and I don't think I'd seen it since. So I think this was the first time that I'd seen it since then.
Okay. Jerry, how about you?
Yes, this was a movie that I watched for the first time in the late aughts, which was a period of uncomfortable horror movie experiences for me when I was really sort of testing the waters as far as watching cinema that made me want to not have eyeballs anymore. This one was pretty tame by comparison to a lot of the other stuff that I watched, but it still gives me the heebie-jeebies, and I remember it from that period of time as a movie that made me feel slightly off.
I think we just found our next special episode series is movies that makes Jerry want to tear his eyeballs out.
No, thank you. No, thank you.
Let's watch 5 of them.
What was the most eyeball teary outy of the ones that you saw, would you say?
Probably the movie that has made me the most physically uncomfortable is Cannibal Holocaust.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
That does not sound great.
It's
Have you-
awful.
Kyle, you've seen it?
I've seen it, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh. That sounds made up.
We don't have to talk about it. Oh boy.
Yeah. It's gnarly and not
It's
in the good
one
way.
of those-
Not in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles way.
It's almost a snuff film, and it might actually be a snuff film.
Ooh. It's one of those movies that Patton Oswalt would say that you get to kind of picture the movie just from the title.
Yeah.
So, like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, it's like you already know what's going to happen.
It's pretty much on the tin. Yeah, you got it.
Anyway,
All right. So, as usual, in part 1 of this episode, we are going to be talking about how we would recast the film today. Normally, we have major and minor characters, and we're doing it just a little bit different this time. We have 3 major characters that we're going to be discussing, and we're actually not going to be discussing any minor characters. Rather, we are going to be discussing the director of the film and who we would have direct our remake. This was such a kind of vision-based film that we thought that would be a good thing. There were other minor characters in there, some of whom are, pretty good actors or well-known actors, but just didn't have the impression, and I think the director would be a better fit for that. So we've got 3 majors and the director. First major is Peter Novak. Jer, tell us about Peter.
Peter Novak is an FBI agent leading an investigation into a serial killer. After tracking the rapscallion down, they find him in a coma suffering from the same rare disease as Catherine Deane's patient. He's driven by an insatiable need to save the final missing victim of Carl Stargher, and maybe he's haunted by his past or something. Peter is originally played by Vince Vaughn, as you said, and he's pretty much, in many ways, just kind of your prototypical no-nonsense detective from a detective movie. This is in sort of a weird period of Vince Vaughn's career where he was trying out his serious chops in between Swingers and everything else, apparently. But I didn't mind his performance. It was fine. The character felt like he needed his story told a little bit more, and I would have liked to have seen diving into what is motivating him more than just a couple of exposition dump scenes. But I wanted somebody that was going to play kind of that haunted detective that they were trying to get with Vince Vaughn, of somebody that's sort of wrestling with their past and haunted by it and desperately wanting to not let this victim die, and with this desperate need to save them. So I wanted somebody that was going to be able to play sort of that pain behind the eyes kind of character. And so I chose Diego Luna, who many of us would know from Rogue One as Cassian Andor. He's also been in a whole mess of stuff. He's in Narcos. He was in
Y tu mamá también?
Yes, that's the other one that I could not remember how to begin to pronounce. He's really wonderful, and I really, really like. I like how he acts. I like how he acts with his eyes, and even his character in Rogue One, which is a bubblegum action adventure movie in the Star Wars universe. He brings a lot of inner pain into the role that really elevated that movie to a higher level than I think that it could have been. So that's Diego Luna, and that's my pick.
Well, I disagree with your claim of Rogue One being a bubblegum action movie. I do endorse your pick.
Thank you, and thank you.
It is pretty dark in the long run. It's a hell of an ending.
It is, yeah. That's my pick, and I will I'll hand off to Kyle. Who is your pick for Peter Novak?
I wanted somebody who seemed very stubborn in a way that I think stubbornness can be a feature or a detriment. And I wanted this to be equal parts both. Sometimes stubbornness can go a long way in success in life, but at the same time, it can really beat you down or keep you from getting somewhere. And I want somebody that presented in that way exactly. And I decided to go with Daniel Kaluuya, who you would probably most know from Get Out. He played the main character in that. He is also in Judas and the Black Messiah right now as Black Panther's head, Fred Hampton. I haven't watched that yet, but I've heard amazing things, and I can't wait to do so. He was in Widows, had a real short part there. He was in Black Panther, was great there. He just has a face that is so serious all the time, but can also do light. I think of some of the interactions with the other character in Get Out, whose name I totally can't remember. Brian Williams' daughter, Allison Williams. There we go. They had fun interactions, but he just has such a serious look to him that I think that would lend itself really, really well to this role. He's still charismatic, but he just seems like you really have to push him to think of anything other than that which he wants to do, which I feel like this character, I feel, your summary of wishing to have more, I think is right on. I would love to know sort of how he got the way he is, a little bit more about his past. But I really felt like he would do a good job with that. So Daniel Kaluuya is my guy.
I like him a lot.
Yeah, me too.
I first saw him in Black Mirror, and his character in the episode that he was in Black Mirror was very different than anything else I've seen him in, but also really good.
Cool. I'll have to look for that one. I've been afraid of Black Mirror just because it was I think it's too real or too close to home in a lot of ways, and I just wasn't there for that. But I feel like I'm kind of at a place where I can be okay with that and not be too beaten down. I've watched a couple episodes and enjoyed them, but yeah, I know it's a lot.
Yeah, there are episodes that are excellent. There are episodes that kind of miss the mark, and there are episodes that you end feeling pretty guilty about many decisions that you've made over the course of your life as it relates to electronics.
Yeah. Perfect. Well, there we go. I'm in. Andy, you're up next. Who is your Peter?
My Peter is going to be very different from the original Peter. I felt that Vince Vaughn's portrayal was difficult for me to believe, partly because Vince Vaughn was 30 years old when this movie was released and seemed a little young to me for this character to already be so bitter and jaded and already to have transitioned from one successful career to another. He talks about how he was a prosecutor, I believe. So I had a hard time with that one. And also Vince Vaughn and Jennifer Lopez, much more so Jennifer Lopez than Vince Vaughn, are attractive people. And I wanted to take away, I wanted to bring in actors who I felt would be more believable for their portrayals of the characters rather than just because they're pretty. Side note, did you guys know that Vince Vaughn was born in Minneapolis?
I did not.
Did not know that.
I just found that out. Thanks, Wikipedia. Anyway, I chose Michael Rooker for the character of Peter Novak. If you don't know the name Michael Rooker, you would definitely recognize him if you saw him, especially if you've seen Guardians of the Galaxy, where he played Yondu. Mm-hmm. So, although in that one he was blue with a metal mohawk, he normally is not blue with a metal mohawk. I like Michael Rooker for this because I want an actor who's much older. For a guy to be this jaded and bitter, I want him to be, he's seen so much in his career, could be believable as having gone through the extensive, training process of law school, had a career where he already got to the level of a public prosecutor and then switched to an FBI agent, and just being kind of just beaten down, but still incredibly competent at his job, because in the end, it's this character, Peter Novak, who solves the mystery. So I went with Michael Rooker for my choice.
Very interesting. I like the dirtying him up for sure. And he plays a not likable guy almost all the time. Mm-hmm. He does it so well that I feel like that's what Vince Vaughn really tried to do. That came off just kind of stubborn as opposed to unlikable. And I feel like he could really ramp that up in a good way.
Yeah. I think especially when Peter Novak goes into Stargher's mind and bad things happen to him, that it would be, I don't know. I like the picture. Not that I want to picture those things happening to Michael Rooker, but I think it would be much more interesting to me to watch that. Anyhow, Mark, you're up.
I am up. So for my Peter Novak, I wasn't trying to get too fancy. Like, I wanted somebody who could do gritty, somebody who could be animated, maybe somebody who looks great with a metal arm. So I picked Sebastian Stan.
That's a good qualification.
Yeah, thanks. We know him from many things, but his highest profile role is in the Marvel Cinematic Universe as Bucky Barnes, aka the Winter Soldier. He's great there. He doesn't show off a lot of flashy acting, but he just does it, as it should be done. He's perfect in it. For weirder stuff, he was in a series called Once Upon a Time, which isn't a great series, but has a lot of great people in it. So if you like fairy tale mashups, it's not a complete waste of your time.
And doesn't he play Jeff Galooly in I, Tonya?
Yes, he does play Jeff Galooly in I, Tonya.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
He's fantastic.
That's one of his better performances, I think.
Yeah, he was great in that.
Yeah.
So that is my pick for Peter Novak, is Sebastian Stan. Lee, let's hand off to you.
Well, going with the kind of gritty detective, sort of the rougher look, I thought that was important for this role. So I went with Joaquin Phoenix because he is a little older, which I think, I agree with Andy that the character does need to be a little bit older because, I don't think you have a long career as a prosecutor and then go work for the FBI in your 20s. So I think I wanted someone a little bit older, but also someone like him who you're kind of always wondering, what's going on behind the eyes. So I liked him for this role. So Joaquin Phoenix is my pick.
Nice.
I like that pick.
Thank you.
Joaquin Phoenix could fill several roles in this movie.
Yeah, true. I feel like he could get, especially when he gets inside, when he gets inside the mind of Carl Stargher, like you would just feel like things are about to go off the hinge in a different way than they actually do.
And when I was thinking about him, I was kind of thinking about the torture scene. And that's what was the touchstone for me for casting him. So, yeah.
Always fun to think about that.
Yeah, it's great.
I like all of these picks feel like they fit the mold that I was looking for, with that just sort of haunted past, grizzled old, like there's something behind the eyes, and all of our picks really nail that to a T with the folks we picked. So good job, everybody.
Did anybody watch the Golden Globes?
Nay.
No.
Joaquin Phoenix announced one of the last awards. I can't remember which one. Maybe Best Actress? I can't remember. Amy Poehler. So Tina Fey and Amy Poehler co-hosted from New York and LA respectively. And so they were like kind of split screen. Amy Poehler happened to introduce Joaquin Phoenix, and her introduction was, a former Mouseketeer and a real silly Billy. Here's Joaquin Phoenix. And I laughed so hard at that. He is a real silly Billy after all. So I couldn't believe that. It just killed me.
I wish I would have seen that.
All right. So for the role of Peter Novak, originally played by Vince Vaughn, Jer went with Diego Luna. I went with Daniel Kaluuya. Andy went with Michael Rooker. Mark went with Sebastian Stan. Lee went with Joaquin Phoenix. Up next is Carl. Mark, tell us about Carl.
Certainly. Originally played by Vincent D'Onofrio, Carl Stargher is straight up Looney Tunes. He enjoys dolls, suspending himself from chains via steel rings embedded in his skin, and last but not least, torture and murder. It is in his twisted mind that Catherine and Peter must find their clues to save the next murder victim. Jinkies. Yeah, this character and the performance by D'Onofrio are really something else. And for my pick, I mostly asked the question, like, who would go there? Who would really put in that performance that where they didn't hold anything back? And my pick is Lee Pace.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yep.
Yeah, we know him from a bunch of things. Probably the highest profile, again, in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. From Guardians of the Galaxy, he played Ronan the Accuser. One of my favorite performances of his is in a TV show called Halt and Catch Fire.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. Where he plays the main character who's a very, very 80s sales executive.
Kind of a scoundrel.
Yeah. A little bit of that, and really leans into it. That's what I would want him to do for this role, is really lean into it.
Interestingly enough, he also appeared in one of Tarsem Singh's only other feature films called The Fall.
Yep.
Yeah.
He's really good in it too.
I have yet to watch that. I do want to see it though.
Yeah, it's good. I'd rewatch it. Yeah. Cool. That's a good pick, Mark. I like that.
Thank you. Let's move on to Jer.
Yeah, I similarly wanted to find somebody that had the range to really portray just the various iterations of who he envisioned himself to be within his own mind, sort of this king ruling over everything, and the sympathetic version, and the young and the old, and like all of these different sort of iterations. And I went with somebody who is not part of the Marvel universe, sort of, and that is James McAvoy.
Yes, he is. Kinda.
Yeah.
Kinda.
But
you
maybe
may
in the
know
future.
him.
Do crazy.
Yeah, exactly. You may know him as the newest Charles Xavier from all of the most recent X-Men movies, but I would probably point you towards his roles in both Split and Glass as my inspiration for choosing him, where he plays in the Shyamalaniverse a character with multiple personalities, and one of them is sort of this beast-like character, and he just really shows off a tremendous amount of range in being able to not only just sort of transform his voice, but his mannerisms and his how he walks, and everything changes into this other person. And he's really one of those actors that really just envelops a character. And I just think that he would do some really different than D'Onofrio, but really amazing things with a role like this.
Also, surprisingly ripped in those movies.
Surprisingly ripped.
Yeah, he got pretty thick for those.
Yep.
That's a good choice, man. I like that.
Thank you. Let's pass it on to, back to you again.
All right. Excellent. Yeah, I mean, it's Vincent D'Onofrio is hard to replace. So I don't know that I tried to go quite as wacky as he was in the original. I wanted to go with kind of unsettling. And sometimes I think unsettling can come from beauty that leads to unsettling. And that's sort of how I went with this. I went with Chris Messina, who is a very handsome gentleman.
Ooh.
He's a very good looking guy, but he can also be really slimy and creepy. I don't know if anybody has watched the series The Sinner. I think it was on USA originally. There's 3 seasons. Each season deals with like a different crime that occurs. The first one's with Jessica Biel. Yeah, Jessica Biel. Second one's about a kid that maybe murdered somebody. You don't really know. Third one is about a guy that murders his buddy, who is a total creep, and he plays the buddy. His name's Nick Haas in the show, and he is just like a creepo slime ball. Blah. He's just, just gross. But he's so handsome that you're kind of like, look at that guy, and then you're like, oh, look at that guy. He's played lots of different things. He was in Sharp Objects. I really enjoyed him there. I think he played like one of the main love interests in the Mindy Project, one of the doctors that she's totally into. So he's kind of been all over. I was amazed at how creepy and off he could be in The Sinner. So that was really what informed that. We've just watched that pretty recently. So I really think that he could do a good job of doing that. And I think he would be willing to kind of go there from a visual and physical standpoint as far as like, makeup and prosthetics and what have you.
I really liked him being creepy in Suicide Squad. No, not Suicide Squad. The second one.
Birds of Prey.
Oh, yeah. Birds of Prey. Yep.
Yeah,
Totally.
I was just going to mention that too.
Yeah.
Good call. I
Yeah,
forgot
I like
about
that
great.
movie.
Yeah, good call. Thank you for supporting my choice. Lee, on to you.
Well, the thing that I like about, or that I find interesting about the character is like how, I guess, unnoticeable he is, really. He's kind of one of those guys who would just sort of blend into the background. And I think that's how he's able to get away with some of the stuff that he does. But I wanted someone who was absolutely believable as sort of a gentle person, but also could be very violent. So I went with Adam Driver.
That's a good pick.
Yowza.
Because he has he plays both of those sides really well. He was in a little known trilogy called Star Wars recently, where he played a bad guy. So I think we're all familiar.
That's the one that takes place in space, right?
Yes.
And
With
has
the laser
wars?
swords?
Yes. where every planet is a different climate.
Topography.
It's like it's like a political drama mostly. Trade federations and
Yeah.
negotiations.
Boy.
It's that one is a racing film, right?
Yeah.
It could do with a rewrite, but it's got potential.
Yeah. I think, it'll make up whatever money it lost in DVD sales. So, yeah. But that's my pick, Adam Driver.
I have both a hard time picturing him being that creepy and also not a hard time at all picturing him being that creepy.
I especially see him in the inner world being just like a gigantic dynamic presence. Wow, I just made up a new word. Dynamic.
Dynamic.
Please never say that word again.
What, dynamic? Yeah, I really just feel like, I mean, he's such a big dude, you know? I mean, he's tall, he's really built. Like he would be something fierce in there.
Yep, I think so too.
Also, if we could get him to drive around in a smart car like he did in that Jarmusch zombie movie, I would be so happy. Just for a nice little tag.
I still need to see that.
Oh God, it's so funny. Yeah, so good.
But moving on to Andy.
So Kyle originally thought that I had switched my picks for Peter Novak and Carl Stargher, but no, this was intentional because Kyle actually set it up perfectly for me when he talked about having, was it beauty lead to, I can't remember what you said now.
The Beast. No, it wasn't but I like it.
But essentially, so Vincent D'Onofrio's performance was, as Mark said in the introduction, something else. It was creepy. And there was really no doubt ever that Carl Stargher was capital B bad. However, I would also like in my remake to make it maybe a touch less obvious. And I cast John Krasinski. So I wanted someone who on the surface would be generally perceived, especially by the audience, as, oh, it's Jim from The Office. He's a lovable guy. I can't think of any performance of his that people would see that and be like, oh, like Joaquin Phoenix, for example. People see him and there's a natural, ugh, but that's intentional because he's a fantastic actor and he takes on those roles. John Krasinski, I don't really think has taken on any roles like that. And I think he has this, deserved or not, I don't really know. Never met the guy, but kind of this, good old, good guy kind of persona. Yeah. So I think pairing that and using that to our advantage of then having him be this completely twisted and evil person under the surface would lend something to that character. So John Krasinski is my choice for Carl Stargher.
I like that idea.
Thank you.
That is out there.
I swear to God, if he stares right at the camera, I'm going to throw my phone through my television, though.
And then just shrugs his shoulders.
Yeah. That's interesting. I'm not going to pick it, but I'd be willing to watch it.
That's fine. I figured you wouldn't.
Well, just picture the scene where she's in his mind and he's, talking about his first victim and he's disemboweling her.
Right.
Now picture John Krasinski doing that.
Yeah.
It's like recasting Diet Coke in a Jack Daniels role.
Yeah.
I kid. It's a good pick, Andy. I like it.
Sticks and stones.
I like where you're going with it. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
You got it. So for the role of Carl Stargher, originally played by Vincent D'Onofrio, Mark went with Lee Pace, Jer went with James McAvoy, I went with Chris Messina, Lee went with Adam Driver, and Andy went with John Krasinski. Finally, in the acting side, we are done with Catherine Deane. Andy, tell us about Catherine.
Ms. Deane is a psychologist, I think. She has a gift, I think. She is troubled, I'm pretty sure. But she also seems to have a heart of gold and wants to believe that everyone is good on the inside. Way, way, way down deep inside. Also, we see her in her underwear for no reason other than it's J-Lo.
Yes, it's so true.
So continuing on with my theme of not making this a film about pretty people. I wanted someone who maybe had a little more in the way of dramatic chops for this one. I was confused as to the point of this character in the plot of it, and that we can talk about that in the second half of it. Anyhow, I chose for my psychologist, Catherine Deane, I chose Octavia Spencer.
Oh.
Nice.
So again, I want someone who I feel can bring a lot more in the way of dramatic credibility to this role, and I think just would make it a little more interesting. I'm not going to say that J-Lo made the screen worse. I mean, she's a beautiful woman up there, and then we get to see her in some pretty crazy looking costumes. But at the same time, I also was thinking about this, like, okay, now put Octavia Spencer in there in these weird, super trippy costumes, and all of a sudden, to me, it seems more like, what the hell is going on here? Like, this is it makes it more interesting to me, at least. So, and I think she would do a fantastic job. She's Octavia Spencer. So there you go.
Yeah, and the child psychologist part of it, I feel like she would really do a wonderful job of that. Like, I feel that would be sold much more easily in that role. I like that.
Yeah. And I kind of like picturing her in the more surrealist, bizarre aspects of it too, just because that jarring, the twist of it would be much more jarring. Anyhow, Jer, it is to you.
Yeah, I also was pretty mediocre on J-Lo in the film. I wanted somebody that had a little bit, that simultaneously could do the believable child psychologist, heart of gold, like care for all people, there's good in everybody, but then also when they get into the dream sequences, especially when they towards the end, when we get into sort of the third act and she's taken control, like it's in her dream world, that there's some edge and there's some like, I'm in control now, I'm the badass kind of thing. And so I chose Journey Smollett, who you may know from most recently Lovecraft Country on HBO. She was also in Birds of Prey as the Black Canary. She got her
nice.
She got her start back in Friday Night Lights and a movie called The Great Debaters, and she's done a ton of other TV shows and some movies and things. She's really great, and I really like her look and how she just really carries a scene with her.
I've heard that name a ton, but I don't think I've seen anything other than Birds of Prey, and I can't picture her in that. So I think I just need to see Birds of Prey again. But yeah, I've heard a lot of good things.
She's the nightclub singer that knows karate.
Oh, okay. That makes sense now. Good clarification statement.
That's a resume builder.
There's more to her than that, but she's great.
Yeah, she does bring a lot of presence in that role.
Yeah.
Presence. That's the word I was looking for. She has an amazing presence. Thank you. Yes, so that is my pick, Journey Smollett. And I will pass it to Kyle one last time.
Well, thank you. I liked J-Lo, but I felt like there were some things that could have been done better. I wanted someone that had a little bit more of a stoic presence while still maintaining some of the sweetness that J-Lo had that I think could lend to that child psychologist side of things, especially. So I decided to go with Emmy Raver Lampman, not a super household name. She is in the Umbrella Academy. She plays Allison, who is one of the sisters in the family. So if you have seen the Umbrella Academy, you will know who I'm talking about. She's the one that can rumor people, that can kind of whisper what they should be doing. She's great. I really like her presence. I really feel like she would take what J-Lo did and just sort of hone it a little bit more. I think she would be totally down for doing all the crazy costumes. And I think she would look great and be very imposing and or sweet in that environment as well. So not vastly different from J-Lo, but I just had a vision of her in the role, and so I decided to go with it. So Emmy Raver Lampman. I know this is not going to be a big vote getter because not a lot of people have seen the Umbrella Academy, and that's okay. I'm okay with that.
I need to get started on season 2, but I really liked all of the cast of season 1.
Yeah, she's really good in season 2. I think you'll like it a lot.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Right on. And up next is Lee.
Well, I really liked how sympathetic this character was. This is one of the things that surprised me most about seeing the movie was, J-Lo's performance. Because I really wasn't expecting that, and I found it to be very convincing. So I wanted to find someone who I absolutely believed has like a nurturing personality. So I went with Elizabeth Olsen,
Yep.
who we're going back to the Marvel universe quite a bit, but yeah, she plays the Scarlet Witch. What is her character's name though?
Wanda.
Wanda Maximoff.
Wanda
that's it.
Maximoff.
That's it. Every movie that I've seen her in, she has a very like gentle, nurturing presence, and yet, can be very tough when she needs to be. So I thought that she would be great for a role like this.
I would agree. Like both those traits are on full display in WandaVision.
Yeah.
I still have to watch that. I will. I just haven't gotten around to it.
Yeah. We just
It's
started it,
fantastic.
and we're 5 episodes in right now and just loving it. Absolutely loving it.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's one of the best Marvel properties in my opinion.
Yeah, mine
Really?
too.
All right.
And she is to credit a lot of that. I mean, the writing and just the way that they built that series is amazing, but the way that it revolves around her and her emotional processing is really astounding. She does a fantastic job.
Okay.
Yep. It's essentially
I
a show
can't wait to
about
watch
grief that is presented through 50s, 60s, and 70s TV tropes. So it's really either two very disparate things that go together really well.
Nice.
Yeah.
And I think Mark will finish us off here.
Yes, I will. So for my Catherine Deane, I was looking for something a little bit different. I thought J-Lo was fine. I thought she did everything she could. I didn't fully buy her as a psychologist. As a social worker, sure. I think she nailed the stuff with the little kid. But I wanted to pick somebody who I would take a little bit more seriously, and somebody who has the acting chops as well. And to complete my MCU hat trick, I picked Carrie Coon.
Funny. That's a sneaky MCU too.
It is. She is heavily made up in the Infinity War and Endgame movies.
Was she actually in the physical realm? I assumed it was mocap.
I
Yeah,
think
that's
it was
a-
motion cap.
Yeah, it's a good question.
Yeah. Anyways, yes, she's phenomenal. I almost picked her. I was like this close to picking her. I just think she's as good as we have for actresses out there today and would be amazing for that. So yeah, I was real close to choosing her.
Yep, I thought the same things. And so I did choose her.
Well done.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I've always liked her.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yep. All right. For the role of Catherine Deane, originally played by Jennifer Lopez, Andy went with Octavia Spencer. Jer went with Journey Smollett. I went with Emmy Raver Lampman. Lee went with Elizabeth Olsen. And Mark went with Carrie Coon. Finally, we are going to be talking about the director of the film and how we would recast directing here. The director was originally Tarsum Singh. In a world where movie posters and taglines claim all too readily "from the visionary mind of," or "from the singular vision of," this movie can actually support that. Tarsum was indeed singularly responsible for the vision and tale of the movie, and I'm very curious to see who we think can fill those shoes in a remake today. So let's give it a shot. I'm up first. I was all over the damn place of thinking about how to do this. I went from everything from like the most grotesque, like Matthew Barney Cremaster cycle, like just totally jacked up, like no story, all visuals, to something like David Cronenberg, where, then I was like, well, he kind of already made that with Existenz. Like that's not drastically different. So I seriously was like, I was all over the spectrum. I was visual focused. But aside from that, I was thinking of like everything. And where I ultimately landed was much more story driven, but I think the visuals can be done as effectively in a way that isn't quite as showy. Though I like that this one was showy, I don't think a remake would necessarily need to. I went with the fear factor and the intensity factor. And for that, I chose Jordan Peele. He has shown himself to be a master of that, of directing actors and telling a story that is just off center in so many different and interesting ways that you never quite know what's going to happen. And I feel like that would lend itself so well to this story. So you just can't go wrong with Jordan Peele.
Very nice.
Thank you. Yeah, I really want to see that movie. Lee, on to you.
Well, I wanted someone who would direct it in a way that seemed more like it was like we were just sort of eavesdropping on the characters. So I kind of bounced back and forth between a couple of different directors. But I landed with Catherine Bigelow because I really like her style of I guess her gritty style of directing and telling the story. If you've ever seen like Zero Dark 30 or The Hurt Locker, she's really great at that. So I thought she would be great for something like this.
That's awesome.
So yeah, Catherine Bigelow.
That's a good pick. I would be very intrigued by that movie. I think the same kind of thing, like differently flashy. I think from a character-driven standpoint, that's spot on.
Yeah. But
cool.
On to Andy.
The visuals in this movie seemed to be a big selling point of the film. And I think while it was very ambitious in its visual, I felt like it relied overly much. It relied too heavily on them. Thank you. That's the one.
You're welcome.
And this came out in an era of a film when there were some really, really impressive visual films coming out. The Matrix came out in a year prior to this one, just as one example. So to me, it seemed that it was trying really hard to kind of ride that visual wave, but I just was a little unimpressed with it. It seemed like it was high on idea, but maybe a little lower on execution. So that's just my take on it. But I really wanted to continue on using and relying on those heavy visuals because I think they are a very important part of the story. After all, we are going into someone's mind. So I wanted to find a director who could do that, who has actually already done that by putting people into other people's minds. And so I chose Christopher Nolan.
Very appropriate.
He does do that.
Yep. I considered him.
And just using Inception, because really Inception seems to have taken a lot of things from this movie, plot points, things like that. But the visuals in Inception were just unbelievable. And I would love to see a director really take that aspect of it and really make it shine.
Every movie that he does is visually stunning.
It really is. It really is.
Yeah.
Mark, who you got?
I wanted to find a director that can do Twisted. Yes, I really wanted the visuals, and yes, I wanted the characters, and I think I got somebody who can do those. But I want somebody who can really unsettle you. and I picked Lars von Trier.
Yep.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm. I think a movie like this about being inside the mind of a serial killer deserves to shake you, and I think von Trier will definitely do that. He's definitely done that to me in a couple of films.
Yeah, for sure. That's a really cool pick. I would not want to watch it because I would be a little worried about watching it, but I would 100% want to watch it because I would be a little worried about watching it. It's one of those.
Yeah.
Yeah, that feels like a very unsafe movie to watch. And that's a compliment to the nutso stuff that he does.
Mm-hmm. Jer, back to you.
Yeah, this will come as no surprise to anybody, I'm sure. But I chose who I chose because he has built amazingly bright, vibrant, colorful, beautiful worlds and then populated them with very small human-based stories. And so I chose Guillermo del Toro.
Nice. I like that.
I was wondering if somebody would pick him.
And like Kyle, I was all over the place. I even considered trying to get Francis Ford Coppola out of retirement to do this. But ultimately, I love the visual style that Guillermo does with Pan's Labyrinth and Hellboy, even Pacific Rim and The Shape of Water, and some of his other sort of fairy tale-ish movies, Crimson Peak even. He just really makes visually amazing worlds, but he doesn't lean into that as the reason to watch. It's still a human story, and I think that would be that would really be on display with a movie like The Cell.
Yeah, that's a great description.
Yeah, I think a remake of this one is tailor-made for him.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like what you talk about that Del Toro does is what it felt like Andy talked about it was lacking, which again, we'll get into the second part, but I feel like that is a perfect description for what could fill in that gap a little bit. Right on. So for director, originally directed by Tarsum Singh, I went with Jordan Peele. Lee went with Catherine Bigelow. Andy went with Christopher Nolan. Mark went with Lars von Trier. And Jer went with Guillermo del Toro. Dang, y'all, we did it. We did 4 majors, kind of 3 majors and directors. I thought that was really, really fun and really, really cool. Well done.
Mm-hmm.
Remakers Mark is a proud member of the Math is Hard Network. To find out more information about this podcast or any other podcast on the network, check us out at mathishard.net. There you will find show notes with links to all of the people, movies, and links discussed in this episode. This information is also attached to the show file in the podcast client of your choice. You can find us anywhere you listen to podcasts, including Google Play, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, where you can rate and review Remakers Mark, which would mean the world to us. And now we are on YouTube. We are on Facebook, search for Math is Hard Net or Remakers Mark, Twitter at Remakers Mark, and Instagram at Remakers Mark Podcast. So please join in the discussion there too. Try not to have any nightmares, gents. I know it's hard. Just remember that if you hear kind of like a ballerina spinning or something, that you're safe. Everything's going to be okay. And remember always, may the force be with you.
And also with you.